Hey there, Nerdherd. Our audit series continues on. We have moved out of the off-season, are well into the 2023 season. So we look now at how we can build out the rest of our year for our team to be a championship contender. What can we do with a Superflex tight end premium team this week? Let's find out.
Welcome back, guys. Dan and Tim here, back with another edition of the Dynasty Team Audit series. And for our in-season content, we are running a pretty special contest. For those of you that know, we've been partnering with Underdog Fantasy Football all year long, and Pick'ems is probably the most fun way to play Underdog once you're in season. So we're running a contest in our Discord. You post 5 slip Pick'ems. If you go 5 for 5, not only do you bring home $200, like our friend Neuens here did, but you also get featured the same week Dynasty Team Audit. So it's instant analysis, instant reaction as we're in the season. Tim and I were actually watching the Steelers game on Sunday Night Football. It's trying to see, is your team 2-0? Is your team 0-2? Let's figure out the best way to finish out the 2023 season. So Neuens here has a 12-team Superflex, half-point PPR with 4-point passing touchdowns.
Right.
Now, this bad boy is deep. They start quarterback, 2 running back, 3 wide receiver, tight end, 3 flex, and a Superflex with 29 bench spots. I mean, Tim, tell me, first takeaway, what are you thinking?
I mean, 11 starters and 29 total slots on your active roster. That's a pretty slim pickings free agent pool that's going to be out there. So when you're trying to improve your team in a league like this, at least after the first couple weeks of the year, which have already gone by, where maybe a Puka Nacua was available at that point and somebody spent a bunch of waiver money. We'll get to that, but once you get into the year, there's not going to be a lot of guys that are going to pop up on waivers that are going to be big-time ads for your teams. And in recent memory, like Brock Purdy is probably one of the only ones I could think of that was, well into the year that was worth a big amount of money from waiver perspective. And when you have 12 teams and 29 players per team, if you're going to improve, it's going to have to be through trading. So you're going to need to be looking around and trying to make some moves to improve your team.
Yep, trading and then hitting on those late round draft picks is going to be very vital. Luckily for our man over here, he's been hitting on some late round draft picks. So I have the Dynasty GM 2.0 app opened up. Remember, if you guys subscribe to the Nerdherd, the GM 2.0 app is included with your subscription. And watch out for the app dropping over on Sleeper, a little integration you guys can look forward to very soon. So his team name is Miss Jackson over here. And like I said...
He is for real.
He is for real. And like I said, late round draft picks, he has a couple hits. I mean, I'm going to go right away. I gotta shout out to all the Puka Nacua drafters. I was just talking to Tim before we went live, talking about seeing Puka at the Senior Bowl. And, I wrote off his performance at the Senior Bowl as him working with his college quarterback in Jaron Hall. But through 2 weeks, it looks like the man has some real talent. Like I said, we're recording this Sunday night, so please disregard any Rams commentary because I know they play tomorrow night. I know it could be a lot different when this video gets released.
Absolutely.
But let's go through this roster real fast. Why don't we, Tim?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, quarterbacks, we have Lamar Jackson, C.J. Stroud, Trey Lance, Tyler Huntley, Aiden O'Connell, Clayton Tune. But, I mean, I like some of the late guys on here, the O'Connell and Tune ads that are in here. Never know what can happen with some of those rookie guys, especially in a league this deep. Running backs, we have Bijan Robinson, so we likely had the top pick in the draft this past year. Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Pierce, Tyler Algier, Kyron Williams, Hassan Haskins, Raheem Blackshear, and Snoop Connor. As far as wide receivers, pretty good group here. Justin Jefferson, Devonta Smith, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jahan Dotson, Deontay Johnson, Traylon Burks, Puka Nacua, Marvin Mims, John Mechie. This is where this amount, name. Terrace Marshall, Jalen Tolbert, Trey Tucker, Trent Sherfield, DeAndre Carter, and Bo Melton all on this team. And then for tight ends, we have Kyle Pitts and then Brock Wright and Brevin Jordan. So this week, I believe Brevin Jordan would have been your top tight end scorer because I think he got in the end zone. And then as far as draft picks, we don't have our own first next year, but we do have this owner Packers Braves fan 1025's first round pick, have our 25 first round pick as well, and a couple of seconds in 2024 as well. So general impressions, like right off the bat, Dan, I mean, what do you think about this squad?
So he said he went 14-2 last year and finished third place in the league, which means he's so very close. And to be honest, 2023 is probably looking really good for him. Mm-hmm. He's got players like Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua who are coming out of nowhere and really producing a lot for his fantasy football team. But it's not a perfect roster. We still got, our quarterback room. We've got Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud. Trey Lance, even 6 months ago, was looking a lot different than Trey Lance is today. So we're definitely going to want to work on that quarterback room because, I was going to say unless we have a Lamar Jackson injury, we'll have another starter, but we already have Lamar Jackson, so we're not even gaining an advantage by, having Tyler Huntley on the roster if Lamar was go down. And the other thing we have to talk about is this tight end room. Kyle Pitts has been a dynasty darling since he was drafted, a few years ago. But unfortunately, we haven't seen anything since. And as Tim mentioned before we started recording, the Atlanta Falcons are looking like a good team that I think was a dark horse to win the NFC South. And if that's the case, guess what? Arthur Smith and that offensive scheme, they're there for 3 more years.
They're not going anywhere.
Which means that we have 3 more years of Kyle Pitts in this offense, which is not what you want for fantasy football. So I'm sure Tim's going to agree, quarterback and tight end is definitely where we want to work on improving this roster.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's exactly it for me. Pitts just scares me now because it's like, if the Falcons go to the playoffs, not only is Arthur Smith and that offensive, coordinator and the rest of the coaching staff going to probably, be around for a little bit, but Desmond Ridder is probably still your quarterback going into next year. I know he had like 38 pass attempts today. 9 of them went towards Pitts. But again, like he had 5 catches and like 41 yards today or something. And before we started, I said that to Dan, and Dan was like, "Oh, pretty good day." Because that's where we're getting to with Kyle Pitts now. Is that if he's getting anywhere near 8 or 9 points, you're actually going like, cool. Great he actually day. Had a pretty good outing this week.
Great day for Pitts.
And that's not what we would be expecting from a guy who's been so highly rated at that position. Like he's been the darling tight end 1 for dynasty owners for a really long time. And right now I'm looking at this and I'm going, hey, we're a contender. We want to win championships. We could win a championship this year. And if Kyle Pitts still has value amongst, some rebuilding teams and some teams that are looking to get younger, which is usually the case, then it might be time to try to swap him out for a tight end that can actually help you this year. Because, Dan and I always say it, banners fly forever. And you want to win a championship, Kyle Pitts is not really going to be pushing you towards that this year, it doesn't feel like.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems like we're in agreement trying to key in on the same points, which we need a quarterback 3, especially during bye weeks. Bye weeks are going to kill this roster.
Right.
Off the top of my head, I don't know when Jackson and Stroud have their bye weeks, but you got to imagine those 2 weeks you're going to be -1 quarterback. And God forbid they both fall in the same week. Guess what? You're just taking a big fat L that week. There's no doubt about it. So I think our first priority should be securing a quarterback 3 for this situation, in which case I'm already thinking, okay, I want an older quarterback, a little bit of questions around him, maybe a questionable offseason, but a surprising start to the season. And, we're going to be talking about Rams a lot this episode. My first thought is to go get Matthew Stafford. This summer, a lot of people have written Matthew Stafford off, coming off the shoulder injury. The Rams, they have a rebuild look about them. We joke it's Matthew Stafford and the teenagers out there. He doesn't even know their names. He has a quote-unquote book of faces that the PR team put together for him, so he can kind of know who these kids are that he's playing with. But as we see in the field through 2 weeks, the Rams are surprising a lot of people. They're looking pretty good. And Matthew Stafford is putting up some pretty decent fantasy production. So
yeah, absolutely. Stafford's had back-to-back. Again, we're recording this on Sunday, so we don't know what happens on Monday night. But Stafford, the first 2 weeks of the year, had over 300 yards in the first 2 games. He had 55 pass attempts last week against San Francisco. So a guy with that kind of volume, plus you have Puka Nacua on this team, wouldn't be a bad little stack to have for yourself.
Stacks don't hurt, especially in a league this deep. Like, I feel like a league this deep, you want almost more of that best ball mindset because you're starting so many of your players. So, like, stacking is going to help you. And going back to that shoulder, Tim, if the guy threw 55 times last week and we don't hear about the shoulder, I'm thinking it's feeling pretty good.
I think it's okay. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
So as luck would have it, Matthew Stafford actually resides on the bottom-ranked team according to our Dynasty GM 2.0 power rankings. And now if we look at this team, it's got, Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford, Sam Darnold, Andy Dalton, Stenson Bennett. Like, it's not a great quarterback room. The running backs leave a lot to be desired. He's starting Dalvin Cook. He's starting Joshua Kelly, which, spoiler alert, it didn't work out for you this week again.
And Austin Eckler is going to come back eventually.
Yes. And then, this is the surprising thing. The wide receiver room looks pretty decent. He got a ton of points from Tyreek Hill, but it's the bottom of our dynasty rankings for a reason. Not sure if this guy is realizing that he has to rebuild, but that's why I always say it's important to open up lines of communication with your league mates. You got to realize that a trade has to work two ways. It has to make you happy. It has to make your trade partner happy. It has to work for both of you. So I'll say it in every video. My first suggestion is always reach out to your league mates, find out what they want, what their interests are, what their goals are. Because if you could find a deal that works for both teams and both parties, that's the best of the best when it comes to 100%. Dynasty fantasy football.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever you're going to seek out a trade, the other side needs to have a reason why they're doing the trade. You can't just go into it going like, well, I'll just throw some value at them and see what they say. Like, you need to kind of figure out what they're looking to do with their team. If they're looking to rebuild, are they looking to contend? Are they just going, I'm going to wait a few weeks and see what happens? All of that is important because if you just kind of throw a blank offer to them, then, you have no idea if that's meeting what they want. And Dan and I have said it on this show before, like, you can annoy people doing that too. You can get owners that are just like, I don't really want to deal with this person. They just keep sending me these bad offers and it doesn't have anything to do with what I want to do. And then they don't want to work with you at all. So get some communication going and talk it out with them for sure.
And to reference the team name in this screenshot, do not send unsolicited trade calculator screenshots.
Absolutely.
They will be deleted as fast as the team name on the screenshot implies.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about, Matthew Stafford. What kind of pieces could we possibly move to acquire Matthew Stafford?
Sure.
Like we said, this team, it needs some youth. They need some young players injected because whether they realize it or not, a rebuild is on the horizon for this team. So let's try to find some guys that we can possibly throw their way to gauge an interest in a Matthew Stafford trade.
Right. One guy that's going to come right off the top for me, and I know this may be surprising to some because he's had a very good start to the year, but Kyren Williams is a guy that I don't know if this holds up for most of the year. Maybe it didn't even hold up tomorrow night by the time that this releases, but here's the thing with Kyren Williams. Darrell Henderson was going to be the next great Rams running back. Cam Akers was going to be the next great Rams running back. And Kyren Williams has a couple of good weeks to start off this year. But what happens when Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford are going to throw the ball 50 times a game and Kyren Williams is only getting, 3 yards a carry on 12 carries? Like, that can dip pretty significantly and pretty fast. He's still a young guy, and there's going to be people that are going to be definitely interested in Williams. I just don't know if I'm ready to buy in that he is that, next stud running back right now. I think there was a reason why he was sitting behind Cam Akers when Akers was healthy with the Rams last year. There was a reason why it's taken a little while for him to even take off at all. And so I'm not totally convinced that Kyren Williams is the future for the NFL, for the Rams. And a team like this could definitely have interest in a guy like that because he's young and he has shown some potential at the start of the year. And so if they're trying to get younger, trying to build out that running back room that looked pretty bad, and they're trading an old quarterback to do so, could be of interest for sure.
And the thing we have to remember is we only have to start 2 running backs, right?
Exactly.
So, Bijan, Ramondre, they're kind of locked into your starting lineup every week.
Yep.
We have the option of starting up to 6 wide receivers if we want to. And if we take a look, like, Justin Jefferson, Devonta Smith, or, must locks, JSN, listen, we are big JSN fans here. I guarantee you the later half of the season, he'll be a every week starter for you.
Yep.
You got Deontay Johnson is eventually going to come back from injury. Treylon Burks, the Tennessee offense is hit or miss, but he's going to be out on the field. And Tim,
give me it.
We got to talk about our guy.
Give me it.
The Marvin Mims breakout is so close to happening. Close to happening. Today, listen, that Miami game was disgusting, but one of the small bright spots on the Denver side was Marvin Mims today. He had a touchdown in the return game. He had a bunch of receiving yards, a bunch of targets. We talked back in the spring during the draft that we loved Marvin Mims going to the Broncos, that it was just unfortunate that he had to play behind so many good players. Tim and I are the biggest Marvin Mims fans, and even we're shocked at how fast he's taking on the league.
Yeah. I was not expecting it to be this quickly. I mean, he's had back-to-back weeks of over 70 yards receiving. He's had touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. I mean, he's already a relevant starter in fantasy football, especially in a league that's got 3 receivers and 3 flex spots, like our league here. So, I mean, when you look at this roster between Jefferson, Devonta, Puka, and this mix, I mean, that's 4 right there. And then this mix of JSN, Deontay Johnson when he returns, Marvin Mims still being involved in this. There's plenty here that you're going to be starting 5 or 6 guys like every single week. So
easily.
The need for Kyren Williams diminishes a little bit in that aspect. I mean, you're probably going to be starting Ramondre over Kyren Williams most weeks anyway. Dameon Pierce finally started to show a little bit more today than the start of the year was. And the thing about Bijan is you've nicely handcuffed it with Tyler Algier. So if something happened to Bijan, you would still have the starting back in Atlanta. So,
and I hate to say it, even if you're really, really in a bind, Bijan and Tyler Algier are proving that worst case scenario, you can start them both potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if Algier's going to get the goal line carries like he did several times, like put them both in. They both have scored already this year. Times.
Yes, exactly. I heard somebody on a show this week talk about how the top 3 producers in the Atlanta offense this year have been Bijan, Tyler Algier, and then Bijan as a receiver. And it's like the offense is exactly. Just going through the 2 of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, stating why we need to upgrade from Kyle Pitts.
But that's a good transition point, Tim, because I think our next area of concern is the tight end room. So why don't you tell the people, or Neuens specifically in this case, what should we be doing with the tight end room in this case?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think right here, you look at it and it's Pitts. Again, I don't think he's going to be able to give you that leg up in matchups when you get to the playoffs, that there's going to be playoff teams that you're going up against that are going to always have an advantage on you with Kyle Pitts being your tight end. The advantage you have is that Kyle Pitts is still that name, that young, up-and-coming, going to be unbelievable tight end, that I think there is people in this league and in any league that are going to want his services. So you got to look around for a tight end that doesn't have as much appeal, at least from maybe a dynasty perspective, and see if you can find a guy that you can upgrade here at this position, because you're going to have to start a tight end every single week, and we just can't afford to be going up against a Travis Kelce in the playoffs and losing, 10, 15 points at one position on our team. So I think you need to try to find something. If that's packaging Pitts with a pick, if it's trading Pitts to get a lower level from a dynasty perspective tight end and getting a pick in return with that tight end, any of those kind of things are going to work. But that's kind of the balance we have to look for here. So there's a few teams in this league that have some guys that I think we've kind of looked around and thought that could be a good move for us. One of them that I think both Dan and I pointed out is Evan Engram, who I'm trying to see which team. He's on the 8th place team on here, Heart Attack Pack. And Evan Engram is really, really interesting for a few reasons. First, that Jaguars offense is a big time passing offense. They are going to throw the ball a lot. It's what they're going to do. They have some decent running backs there, but they are going through the air first. They're having Trevor Lawrence throw the ball first. And Engram, since near the end of last year, has been a big part of that offense. As we stand right now, while Sunday Night Football is going on, he's tight end 5 in fantasy right now. So the 5th best tight end, he's scoring points that are getting pretty close to, those top guys. You're probably not going to get a guy like Sam Laporta because he's too young. You're probably
especially not after today.
Especially not after today. You're probably not getting a guy like TJ Hawkinson unless you pay up a lot more. But TJ Hawkinson's a guy I would love for us to try to acquire. And you're probably not getting a guy like Travis Kelce because Travis Kelce is going to be on a contending team that wants to win it. So after those names, you're kind of in this zone of a guy that might be a little bit older but is a stronger producer. And Engram is right up there for that, that label for what we're looking for here.
Yeah, I agree. And then the other thing you got to remember is that they committed money to Engram. Like he's going to be there for a little while. So even though we're talking about winning now and, banners fly forever and contending for a title this year, we are still a, dynasty focused, group. And Evan Engram will be there for a little bit. So it's good to point out that this is not just a win now piece, win now move. This will continue on for the next few seasons and help you out to maybe even go back to back, which, would be amazing.
Yes. Never hurts to go
Never
back
hurts.
to back.
Never hurts.
But yes. And I think the thing that you also have to just be aware of whenever you're trying to upgrade at tight end is one of the harder positions for everyone to value. So this is another example of why you need to open up the line of communication. Some people will hold tight end very dear and they will be asking for big time payments on it. Others kind of look at tight ends and they're just like, yeah, they're a dime a dozen. Like once you start getting into a certain tier of tight ends, I could have Evan Engram, but I could also have Cole Kmet, and they're going to produce around the same point. So it doesn't really matter. So open up that communication and kind of figure out what they're looking for. Because, if Engram is the guy that we're targeting here and you're thinking of possibly moving Kyle Pitts for him, you should be getting more on top of that deal. So start those conversations, kind of get a feel of where this team is looking to go. Are they looking to rebuild? Are they looking to contend this year? And then go from that point on. We don't have the records right now, so I don't know if anybody had point luck or matchup luck. So we could be talking about a guy that's 3-0 already this year, and he probably wouldn't want to move Evan Engram. So that's the kind of thing, though, when you're looking for a tight end. Evan Engram is just one name we're giving, but look for these kind of more veteran guys on a team that is looking to rebuild or get younger. That's where you're going to find a partner.
Yeah, and another name I love to mention in every episode is actually going to be Zach Ertz.
Sure.
And I would just give me a second to find out where Zach Ertz is living. Here he is. He is on the second to last place team according to our Dynasty rankings. And I always go and check the draft picks, and this guy has kind of already sold a lot of his draft picks. But we look at the room, and he's got Geno Smith, Mac Jones, Joe Burrow on the fritz this week. All the running backs have been struggling, basically, so far this year. And he's got a fairly decent wide receiver room. So I don't know where this manager stands as far as his record goes or his thoughts on his team. But like Tim said, like I said, this is why you open up lines of communication. This could be a guy who thought he had a great team, is going to win a title this year, and now he's sitting here Sunday night looking down the barrel of 0-3 saying like, oh, I called that one wrong, and he might be getting ready to hit the panic button. He might getting ready to hit the button, hit reset, and start buying back picks, start going to get younger players, starting to rebuild early. And if that's the case, guess what? A message Tuesday morning from you saying, hey, how about Zach Ertz? He's going to be sitting there saying, I got a 30-plus-year-old tight end. I need to get anything for this guy because I have to rebuild. And you might luck your way into getting Zach Ertz for a third-round draft pick.
Yeah.
And I haven't checked the numbers, but coming into week 2, Zach Ertz led all tight end in targets in the NFL. He had 18th the first 2 weeks. So he's going to be a part of this Arizona offense, which, guess what? They beat the Cowboys today. The vaunted Cowboys defense gave up points to Josh Dobbs and the Arizona Cardinals. So he might not be the sexiest name. He might not be a Travis Kelce league winner, but there is a possibility he's going to get you more points on a weekly basis than Kyle Pitts will.
Absolutely. The one last guy I kind of teased it that I want to talk about is it's the number 4 team in this league currently as far as dynasty standards go. But our owner here, M1A2SEPV3, is seemingly someone that looks like they might be rebuilding with the amount of draft picks that they have stocked up on their team. But if we scroll down, we'll see at tight end, TJ Hawkinson is on this team. And TJ Hawkinson, since he's joined the Vikings, has been targeted a ton of times. They brought in Jordan Addison as a first-round pick in the draft, and Hawkinson's still getting tons of targets. He is seemingly the second option in this offense still, and an offense that throws the ball a lot. Going into the week, he was tight end 1 on the year. I think he still might be tight end 1 on the year, even after not a huge week this week. But this is kind of a guy that you could circle that could be like, okay, here's a guy that can get me over the top because he's going to win me some matchups based on having a better tight end than the opponent that I'm playing. The thing with Hawkinson is people know he's good now. So you're not surprising anybody and being able to take him off the roster without paying up a little bit. But Kyle Pitts is a great start to the trade talk that you're going to be doing here because you're giving them a young, talented tight end in return. With Pitt's value going down and Hawkinson's going up, you're probably going to have to pay a little more on top of it. But you're looking at a guy who has jumped in and he's got 4 or 5 first-round picks next year already. And if we look around at the rest of his roster, he's got issues all over the roster, right? So the receiver room is really solid with Metcalf, Ayuk, Christian Watson, but then it starts to kind of, go down a little bit. The running back room is not all that hot, even though there's a bunch of names on here that could work. ETN has had a tough start to the year. Javonte Williams is still coming back from injury and hasn't been that great. Madison might not have a job anymore in Minnesota. And Pacheco is still splitting carries with like 2 other running backs in the Chiefs offense. And then look at our quarterbacks. We have Justin Fields, who has been abysmal to start off this year, and Derek Carr got injured today. So this guy may be like, you know what? I'm going full rebuild. I'm going to just tear down, get what I can, get youth and get picks. We own his second-round pick next year. So if he's tearing down and he knows he's going to make his team bad, he knows that could be a high second-round pick. So we could go and we could say, hey, I'm going to start off. I'm going to say Pitts. I'm going to say your second-round pick, and I want to get TJ Hawkinson. Where are you at on that? And then have the conversation start. But Hawkinson is a guy that could get this team that we have over the top. And so that would be a guy, if you want to swing for the fences, that I'd be aiming for.
Yeah. And like we've said many times, reach out to these people, open lines of communication, try to work out a deal that works out for both of you because that's the best part. If you can make a win-win deal, that's the best part of Dynasty Fantasy Football. Tim, do you have any closing thoughts before we get out of here today?
Yeah, just, hey, good work on this squad, building up, some young guys and getting some interesting players onto your roster because this is why people that join the Nerdherd and people that are active on their fantasy leagues, this is what happens. You don't just get Puka Nacua because everyone in the world tells you to get Puka Nacua. It's because you're paying attention to things. You're grabbing guys that are in high volume offenses, high efficiency kind of guys, and things work out by doing that. So, I mean, there's some guys on this roster that still could pan out, and there's guys on this roster that panned out, and you just happen to have them on the roster, and that's why you got to always stay active and making moves in your leagues.
Yep. And also good job on going 5 for 5 on your underdog pick slip today. Listen, guys, we're going to be running this contest every time we do a audit series video this season. So if you want in, you're going to need a Nerdherd membership. Just a reminder, we're working with Underdog Fantasy Football this season. Use promo code NERDS. You get an instant deposit match up to $100. You could use that money. You could play their pick'ems. You can go 5 for 5. You could win $200, and you get featured in a YouTube video. It's a very easy win. And spoiler alert, my man just basically took the over on every Dolphins and Chargers player and smashed that ticket. But
absolutely.
That's it for Tim and I tonight. We thank you guys for joining us and checking out this edition of the Dynasty Team Audit Series. We'll be back next time for you guys with another fresh team to look at. You guys all enjoy your football. Remember, have fun on Underdog this season. We'll catch you later.
Take care, everyone.